Okay, welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Our roll tonight, we have everyone joining us. Mr. Strunk is online. We'd like to announce an executive session that we had just prior to this board meeting to discuss personnel. We're moving into public comments. So this is anything related to the agenda items. Do we have anyone in the room who wishes to offer public comment? Anyone online? Okay, thank you. Moving on to 4.1, Dr. Finnerty.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, one of the gentlemen usually sits behind the camera and helps put this board meeting out on the internet, is actually going to be joining us up at the podium here to introduce some TSA students, please. Mr. Seth Horry. Okay.
Everyone good? Cool. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here today. I'm Mr. Ori. I teach tech ed down the hall here at the high school. We are here today with an amazing group of students. Not all of them could make it, but a lot of them are here, who competed and were successful at our club for TSA, which stands for Technology Student Association. The students who competed at our competition were Mason, Joseph, Jocelyn, Natalie, Kieran, Justin, Kenna, Lauren, Braden, Joshua, McGuire, Jerome, Natalie, and Izzy. So those were the students that we went to the regional competition with who competed. Just for a little background, because TSA is the best name in the world for an organization. It is a national engineering competition with a membership of over 300,000 students across America and the world. We compete at 3 different levels. So we just competed at the regional level, and then there's a state level competition and a national level competition. This past January, we traveled to Colonial School District and we competed at the regional competition. At the regional competition we competed at is the most competitive in the state. There was over 1,000 students in the building that day that we competed with dozens of top schools. Yes, I am extremely proud to say that we represented Pottsgrove extremely well at this competition. TSA has 30 different events that students can choose to participate in. We have fashion design events, we have structural engineering, we have board game design, we have a bunch of different things that students can choose to compete in whatever competition they would like. The students here managed to win a total of 8 ribbons, including 2 first place ribbons out of the whole competition. I'd like to read and highlight those wins right now. So, if you're here, just wave when I call your name, okay? For board game design, they had to design a board game. Jocelyn and Natalie got 5th place. Thank you. And our first place ribbon in board game design was Mason and Joey. So, it's excellent. It's over there if you want to see it later. In 5th place for forensic science, Jocelyn and Joey. Music production got 4th place, Kieran, Grayson, Justin, and Kenna. Structural design and engineering is Kieran and Braden. Technology problem solving is Kieran and Justin. Virtual reality, visual, I can't say this word, VR is Joshua and McGuire. And then first place in photographic technology is Lauren. It was excellent, yes. So give them a round of applause. Almost done. So these students in the future, we have qualified for the state competition in April. So we are planning to travel to Seven Springs which is across the state, to compete with the best of all the regions. We've been hard at work fundraising because it's expensive. We've raised over $3,000 to go, and we're looking forward to this this competition. We're going to win some trophies. That's what I tell them. We're going to get on stage. We're going to win some trophies, right? And I look forward to coming back here and bragging about them again, okay, after. To conclude, this club means a lot to me personally. I competed in this in high school. It helped shape me to who I am today. I am kind of new to the district. This is my second year, but I've had a lot of support, and I really appreciate that. I want to thank everyone, Dr. Smith, Mr. Ansbach, my wonderful girlfriend who's watching, hopefully. Kate, good job. And all the other people who supported and donated to me and the club. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. I wanted just to open it up if you guys have any questions for them. They didn't really want to speak, but if you guys have any questions. Oh, yes, come join us. Justin. This is Justin. Yes.
I just had one quick
Sure.
question. Does this club kind of give you an idea what you want to do in school or go to school or your future?
Yeah, so for me, I competed as well in music production, and I haven't really explored that throughout like my high school career until this competition came around. And I dabbled in it a little bit, but just with this competition, being able to compete and just see how I place, that's really explored my interest, and I'm more interested now in music production than I've ever been. So yes, that this competition has really helped a lot with that. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mason. Anyone else? Go ahead.
So I went in a few different events, but the event that I probably feel most got me to where I want to be is the design problem solving one. And it kind of showed me that I've always had a passion for helping other people and helping people get things done. And if they need a piece of something, like Mr. Horry knows, I've made about half the doorstops in the school currently, I believe, in his wood shop. So I have done a few things. I like helping people. And it really helped me show that I actually can provide solutions to things that, you know, maybe a little more difficult to other people, and I'm glad that it showed me more that I can help with more things. And I am looking into going into maybe an engineering field if I can possibly do so. I just like building things as well, which is nice. So helping people, building things, engineering, generally pretty good fit.
Okay.
Hello. I've always been very interested in arts, and I participated in a lot of events on the more artistic side of the engineering. And my team won the music design, and it's really shown me that the world of all these different engineering and artistic and all of these design things isn't as unattainable as it seemed a few months ago. It feels much more open and available now, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'd like to make a comment if I could. One, I'm very impressed. Like Kieran, I heard your name like 5 times, I think, and a couple of others like multiple times. I think that's really impressive that you can compete at that level in multiple competitions. So you should definitely be proud of that. I would also, Ken, I'd give you the gold medal in fundraising. How your stick-to-itiveness was fantastic, so I appreciate that. And now I do have a question I'd like to kind of tie in. So all month long, we had Ms. Ebert, who's one of your fantastic guidance counselors, in this very room, has had our March Madness College Career kind of readiness event. Seeing as I'm about to talk about that a little bit, I thought it might be even better if you guys did you have any interactions with any of the businesses or schools or anything that you could share that kind of bring home that experience to our board and community?
I was just gonna do
Yep. I felt bad.
So going into this month, I did only a little bit of research into the colleges that were presented here. So I used Naviance, which is an amazing resource that I had never even looked at before, and kind of just did like a general scope and picked, she says pick 5, I picked maybe closer to 15 that I ended up actually visiting. And it was just a great chance to not only make that connection, but also to be able to ask like more specific questions about different programs and clubs that are there that might be a little harder to Google. So, for example, I'm really heavily involved with like the music department and marching band. So it was really nice. I believe it was Lehigh where I asked, what's like the music department like? What does that look like? And I got an amazing answer because one of the representatives was actually a part of the marching band when they attended.
Would you be talking about the Marching 97 at Lamberton Hall on Lehigh's campus? Okay. You have 2 Lehigh grads here.
Oh.
Dr. Nippert and myself, so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for that, and I really hope that we can do it again next year with even more businesses and colleges. Hello. For the March Madness College and Career Fair, I went every single day and talked to every single college and business that came, except Williamson, because they're boys only, which is unfair. I have to say that after talking to a lot of the schools, there are definitely a lot of departments that I wouldn't have looked into if it weren't for my experience with TSA, and a lot of schools that I wouldn't have considered. The first thing that comes to mind is Thaddeus Stevens College. I probably wouldn't have even thought about it, but after talking with the representative and learning about the school and learning about like all the incredible, very well-known hands-on engineering programs and graphic design and all kinds of things that I'm very interested in, and making a good connection with the representative and just making it seem like a really fun place and be able to ask questions. How far away are you? How much does it cost? And what do you think these programs are like? I think that the College and Career Fair was really fun, and I learned a lot that I wouldn't have otherwise. And also the free pens was very cool.
She showed me the pens every single day.
I got a pen from every place that came. But I think that there's a lot of questions. There's a lot I wouldn't have learned if it weren't for my experience with the TSA Club, and a lot I wouldn't have known to even think to ask. And I think that this is beneficial. I think that both things are very beneficial to the students. And it was a lot of fun, and I hope we do it next year, maybe even longer.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I competed in photographic technology and got first. And being able to do the college career fair very much so helped me with figuring out where I'd like to go. Like Natalie said, we're both very heavily involved in the music department, marching band, and orchestra. And being able to find places like Westchester, which is a college I've looked at for a long time now, and being able to also see places like Lehigh and St. Joe's and learn about their music programs and their programs for photography as well, as I'd like to maybe have my own business at some point and also be a music educator. And the whole fair was very, very helpful on figuring out maybe where I'd like to go and where in state. They gave great information on what I needed to get in, on tuition and staying and visiting, and it was extremely helpful. And I was very glad that I had the opportunity to be able to talk to all these amazing colleges. So it was great.
Hi. Well, I myself haven't necessarily had the greatest opportunity to be able to get there, but I have seen many people walk by the stands and whatnot and say, have good interactions and smiles on their faces and genuinely seeming like they're interested in things. But as Kenna was saying, she found TSA was something that really helped her make her decision and inform her about that. And I'd just like to take a moment to shout out Mr. Horry for running all this whole show, running this whole thing together, getting us all involved in this. I actually remember last year, there's a little meeting in his room with about 6, 7 people, where he had all of us come together and he talked about this club for the year out for this year, and that's what really kickstarted all of this. And he's putting a lot of work, putting a lot of effort into this club, and I just think he's great. He's a great teacher. He'll be humble about it until the day he dies, but I think he's my favorite teacher probably at the school. And I think he's a great person, and I'd like to truly thank Mr. Horry for having an area where we can all come together and get in our interests and enjoy what we want to do and figure out what we want to do with our lives. Just a little bit more, because I think that's a big part of high school is figuring out what to do after high school. And I think Mr. Horry has been a great help of that. That is all I wanted to say, but shout out Mr. Horry.
Thank you. Yes. So that's our kids. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Horry. We are moving on to 4.2, which is the budget presentation. Mrs. Clayholt?
Good evening. That's going to be a tough act to follow, especially with what I have to present. Okay, you can go to the next page. So tonight I'm presenting the proposed final budget, which we plan to bring to the April 9th board meeting for a vote. This slide I've shown before, and what this shows is currently with what our assessed values are in the district, raising taxes to the Act 1 index shows that it would net us about $3 million. It also shows that for every 1% increase in taxes, nets us like $427,000. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our revenue and variance summary. It shows our 2023, 2024 budget versus where we're projecting to end up for the year, and also shows our revenue for the 24-25 budget year. And it shows a variance from budget to budget, what that variance is. This slide breaks it down in summary format. You see local income. State income I have on 2 separate lines. You can see most of the state income there on the first line, and the next line is what we get in PSERS. Since the PSERS is a large part of the state revenue that we received, I have that broken out separately there. And then, of course, there's our federal income. This slide shows that we are projecting almost $3.9 million higher in revenue for the 23-24 year. And we are projecting from the 24-25 year budget to budget about $800,000 higher in income. Now, this budget that is presented for the 24-25 year takes into consideration no increase. So the local revenue that you see there does not include any tax increase. So this, as we go through the presentation, I'm not showing any increase there, okay? So I'm going to go into more detail. So if you go to the next slide, this just breaks down our local revenue into major categories. As you can see in the first line, That is our current real estate revenue. This is what we've collected this year. We've collected $374,000 higher than what we projected. And majority of the increase is due to the fact when we prepare our budget, we base it on the current assessed value. And that assessed value, we prepare our budget before the year starts, so that assessed value is as of February. So if there's any housing starts from March through June, that's taken into consideration of why it's an increase. It also, when you go back and look at how we calculate the Act 1 index and how much a tax increase would, how much income we get, it's based upon a certain collection percentage. We never know who's going to pay at the discount versus face value versus penalty, so it's kind of like an average of where we think we're going to collect our real estate taxes at. We take into consideration delinquent taxes. So this is just what we think we're going to collect current year real estate revenue. You can see our interim taxes for 23-24 are a lot higher than what we projected. This year, we had a lot of new housing starts in Lower Township, in Lower Pottsgrove Township. We don't normally see that high of an increase in interim taxes. That's why in the 24-25 year, you see it, leveling out at our normal levels of 200,000. Another big difference that you see is the earned income tax. We're starting to come back into the pre-COVID levels of earned income tax in the area. So we're projecting about 575,000, excuse me, higher. The big difference is earnings on investment, where we're projecting about $800,000 higher. At the time that the budget was prepared, interest rates weren't as high as what they are, and currently this year they have remained high, about 5.5%. So we're really collecting a lot higher earnings on our investments. As you can see in the budget for the 24-25 year, that's dropped down to about 1.4 million. We are expecting, based upon what we're hearing from our investment advisors, that the Fed is going to come in and start reducing rates, and we expect that to happen. They're going to probably this year reduce it like 3 times, maybe that not that high. Not reduce that much, the percentage, but we do expect a decrease next year. In the line item miscellaneous, you may ask what's included in miscellaneous, because it is a high number. In that miscellaneous category, we see rentals. If we rent out our building, that's included. Transportation money that we collect from other LEAs. A lot of that comes from Pottstown. We do a lot of transportation for Pottstown School District. We do have a miscellaneous category too that includes parking from our students, AP test fees. We have Market Street Sports is in there, about 20,000. Also in miscellaneous category, we have prior year revenues that we have collected. That was revenues that we would have gotten in prior years and show up. That's about 148,000. The main reason of prior year revenues that we received, we got money back from the MCIU Shared Services Agreement of about 90,000. And then always after the year ends, we kind of shore up with our charter and cyber schools, so we see a little bit of money coming back from them. And also in miscellaneous, we include our donations, and all the donation money we got was about $83,000. That came from the Pottstown Health and Wellness Foundation, where we received a grant. Okay, going to the next slide, we're going to go through the state revenue. The big difference in state revenue, of course, is a basic ed subsidy that we get, and this year we got $600,000 more than what we projected. As you well know, we always have to plan the budget before the state releases how much money we're going to get. So we did get $600,000 higher in basic ed subsidy. We are projecting to stay level. PASBO and DeVasbo have both recommended that school districts only put in their budget what is the baseline, because there's changing the basic ed funding, and they don't know if it will pass legislation, the additional like $2.1 million that we could potentially get. They're recommending school districts not put that in because they're not really sure that that is going to pass. Since there is a lawsuit about the basic ed funding, they have a feeling that the state is not going to want to deliberate on the basic ed funding. They do not want to spend a lot of time in Harrisburg deliberating on the budget because it is an election year. So they have a feeling that they're just going to say, let the courts decide. We're just going to approve the basic level. So we're taking that recommendation from PASBO and DeVasbo just to put the basic in. And they did put our base funding at level of what we did receive this year. Special ed subsidy was up slightly, about $250,000, but we are keeping that level, like I said, at the base level. We did receive this year the school security and safety grant, which was not budgeted for. We didn't know about this grant at the time we prepared the budget, and we did receive that money. The next slide, we're going to go through the federal revenue. And the big difference here is the ESSER funding going away. I talked about this before. We're losing about $1.6 million in ESSER funding. So that's the big difference. In the 23-24 year, you see we received additional access medical assistant money. That money accumulates at the state until you ask to have that money, until you draw that money down. Last year, we did not draw down any money, and so this year, there's approximately like $750,000 sitting at the state level. They don't like you to keep it sitting there. They like to see school districts draw that down. So we did draw down almost $511,000 in medical assistance. So in this budget that you see for revenue, ESSER money is going away. What is included, we had increased our intervention. We had 3 intervention tutors, which are covered in this grant. And when those positions were filled, they were filled as grant-funded positions that they would go away at the end of the grant. So those positions you will not see are not included in our expenditure budget. So if that's something that the board feels is beneficial and would like to see those positions continued, we would have to add back in approximately $150,000 to expenditures. When we look at the next slide with expenditures, we would have to add $150,000 to our expenses. So this slide is expenditures. It's this broken down the same way as revenues. We're showing what we're projecting our 23-24 budget to compare to what we're projecting. And then you can see what our 24-25 budget is and the variance from budget to budget. In here, the purchase professional and technical services, we're seeing an overage, and that is due to positions through Kelly Services that we provide, like subs and duty aides and any position that we would need to fill. We see an increase there. Also, in other purchase services, that has to do with special education costs, the rise in special education. Property is up a bit. The major capital expense that we put in the budget, in the general fund budget, Most of it comes out of our capital fund. But what we do include here in the general fund budget is our buses. Like every year, we put in money to buy 2 buses, to replace 2 of our buses, because they're aging. We went over budget this year, and the reason for that is we had trouble getting buses. In 22, 23, we had one ordered. It did not get in time for that budget year. So it was already on order, but we didn't spend the money, and that's what put us over this year. So last year we were under, this year we're going to be over a little bit because when that was delivered. So kind of summarizing the information here. Originally, when we prepared the 23-24 budget, the difference between the budget revenue and expenditures, we knew we were going to have, we budgeted for like a $1 million surplus because we knew we had to raise taxes, and we knew we were going to have a little bit of a surplus in our budget because when that ESSER funding went away, it would take more than the index to cover our expenditures. So we knew we had to gradually start doing increases because we wouldn't be able to, with the index in place, you can't raise more than index. So you can't like not raise taxes and all of a sudden raise taxes 15% because of the index doesn't allow you to do that. So we knew we had to gradually start doing a little bit of tax increase. Just looking at the salaries and year over year. So year over year, our salaries are going to increase approximately, like here, 3.3%. That's almost $1 million. So if we're not going to get any increases to revenue right there, that's like 2.5% to 2.5% increase year over year just to cover the increase to our salaries, because that's the majority of our budget is benefits and salaries. So in this budget, like 2 weeks ago, I presented a preliminary budget, and at that time, we were showing about $2.5 million deficit for the 24-25 year. Since then, we made some tweaks to the budget, and those changes were we took out the transfer to the capital. So that was $1 million. So we're trying to bring it in closer. So we took out the transfer to capital of $1 million. Also, we took out our science curriculum, our new science curriculum. We're going to push that off a year. And that was $270,000 decrease to the expenditures. And at the time when I prepared this information, at that time, we had 4 retirees. So when teachers retire, they're basically at the very top of the scale. We project bringing someone in, maybe possibly master's plus 3. And so the difference in that salary for all those positions is about $189,000. So with those changes, currently, we're at a deficit of about $1.5 million deficit currently. So you may have a question. So we're projecting a possible $2.3 million increase in the 23-24 year. So you might ask yourself, well, why raise taxes? We have a surplus the previous year. And the reason for that is because you can't ever raise it high enough. So if you're not covering your actual expenditures and you use your fund balance to cover those expenditures, you're going to eventually use that up, and you can never raise taxes high enough. And I'm going to go back to Dr. Finnerty has a great rationale for it when he talks about like your own personal mortgage. You know, if you're not earning money to pay your mortgage and you keep using up your savings, you're never going to have the money, you know, to pay your mortgage payment if you're using up your savings all the time. So it's kind of this same rationale here. We can never, we don't know what the state's going to do. We don't know if they're going to give us any additional money. What I would suggest doing is when you do have a surplus, is to transfer that money to the capital fund. So we know we have over $60 million that we need to put into our buildings to get them, because they haven't been touched in some 25 years or more, and we need to have repairs and, roof replacement, and we're doing the whole West project. But every time you go out to borrow money, that's going to increase your budget. So if we have to go, we're talking about doing the middle school now. So if we go out and borrow another $10 million to do the renovations on the middle school, let's say, the same as we borrowed $10 million to do the West, that's $500,000 in bond payments year over year. So that's a 1% increase in taxes just to cover bond issuance, your bond payments each year. So if you do have a surplus, if you transfer that to capital, that's just going to defer or delay you having to borrow money going out for, bonds. And I think of this as like variable income, things that you can never predict. Like, we couldn't predict what the state's going to do, what the state's going to come out with a budget. Housing starts and, how quickly the interim bills are going to go out. That and interest, the fluctuation in interest, like, it's all variable income that comes in. It's not like steady money that you get year over year at those levels.
So when we were sitting here a year ago having the same conversation, we talked about the construction projects that we had on our near and medium term, and our capacity to actually afford those investments into our physical buildings. West had been 29 years since the last major renovation. Typically, you start planning renovations at 20 years and execute those renovations at 25. West was at 29. This year, our middle school turns 25. So we have significant costs in our future that are going to be one-time costs. When you renovate a building, that's a one-time cost. We also, as Deb mentioned, we also have labor cost increases. That is a variable. That's going to happen every year. We're going to just the costs of salaries to our to our largest groups. It's $1 million a year, and we are very reasonable in those increases. We have a very reasonable contract with our employees. So that's the cost of doing business. We're going to have to expect that every year it's going to be about $1 million every year increase. That is something that I think we have to embrace when we talk about the budget, that we need to at least cover those costs of labor every year. When we do have surpluses, like we expect to have a surplus this year, those monies can be transferred into our savings account, so to speak, to offset future costs of borrowing and future costs of improving our buildings. That's what Deb was kind of hinting at, paying one-time fees, the cost of renovating with one-time dollar sources, savings account. And then looking at our tax discussions with how we actually pay for the salary increases. Does that make sense? Okay.
So if your salaries go up $1 million a year and you took that out of your savings, the next year it's going to be $2 million higher, and you take it out of your savings that year, then the next year it's $3 million. You're never going to have a year. Okay, well, if you're not getting higher revenue and all of a sudden that year you have to make up $3 million or more, that's higher than the index has been at the highest. Like 7.1 gets you like $3 million. So that's why the steady increases to cover your salaries is a good idea. So the next slide, just for information purposes, does show the history of the index and what the tax increases have been. As you can see, the adjusted index has been going up. 24-25 year is the highest it's been. It's at 7.1. And the next slide just shows detail, for instance, based on the average assessed value of a home, which is $120,000. It's just a scale that shows if you would do, let's say we look at 2.5% increase and you go down to 2.5% on an average home assessed value, that would be a $120 increase to the homeowner. And then the next slide just shows our future budget discussions. On April 9th, we like to vote on the proposed final budget that I presented, or if you want any changes made to it, but we want to present a proposed final budget on April 9th for vote, and then on May 14th, the final budget would pass after 20 days. Any questions? It's a lot of stuff. Thank you.
I do have a quick question. Thank you. I appreciate this style of budgeting where you've removed the budget transfer of the $1 million so we could see what it is before we take any steps. And just kind of to the point of covering our expenses year over year would look like somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.25%. I'm just doing the rough math in my head, 2.25% year over year. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. That helps us as a board to kind of come together and decide, because we're already paying such high taxes for our area, and we want to provide the best education while, fostering a healthy, financially healthy community and attracting new homeowners. So it's something to be very mindful of how much we commit to raising taxes. We know we have to do it in order to preserve this. So as you said, we can't have very minuscule increases and then large increases to make up the difference.
It's not an excuse, but other districts have raised higher than us, and I think that's putting us in a better position with the other districts. And I've heard rates as high as, and Dr. Finnerty can add to this, I've heard rates as high as, like, a lot of school districts are going 5% or so. So if we go less, each time we do that is going to put us in a better light in comparison to the rest of them.
Yeah, one of the things, so I've been here rolling up on 3 years, and I've had the great pleasure to talk with a great number of community members. And there are a couple of competing things that are true. Our taxes in this district are high. I feel that when I talk to our homeowners and I talk to our community members. I will also share that our costs are reasonable. The contracts that the board has negotiated are very reasonable. They treat our staff and team members fairly, and they reflect a reasonable cost of labor. I think the approach the board has taken to plan proactively for the physical security of our buildings is admirable, and I think the approach is strong. So it's a tough spot you're in. I get it. When we're looking at the cost of salaries each year, that really is the number that I think we have to have the conversation around. And to the public, we did have an informational session with the board where we presented budgets, but the board was not allowed to deliberate or discuss any kind of increases or not increasing it. All that happens on TV in front of you. So that's really what tonight is about, is to talk about what you see in the budget and what you want from the administration when we show up here a couple of weeks from now to actually present the final. We will see, we'll likely see a few more areas where we can lower. If we do get more retirements, that does have an impact on the budget. I mean, we obviously hate to lose the folks, but it does have a positive impact on the bottom line. So we might see some more of that. But really, we need to hear from you guys and what direction do you want us to go? Because at the end of the day, as Deb presented, the vast majority of the budget is committed. So there's not much we can cut without changing programs or eliminating programs. So that's, I guess I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I think just an announcement to the public, it also seems that we have lost, we use board docs, and it seems that we have lost connectivity to board docs right now. So all of us are going to be a little bit in the dark here. I know the team, I'm looking at the team, and they're working to reestablish. So please have some patience with us.
Anik, I think you had some comments.
Hello? Okay. So I was looking at, Dr. Finnerty was saying that there's not much room to cut, but I was curious. I was looking at the summary of the non-fixed costs, and the largest category was the general supplies. So with this information that Deb sent, and it has the codes, and I went through all the information. I did have random little questions about some of these that I don't know if we address them regularly, annually. For example, if we look at the 600 for supplies, 640, 650, books and periodicals, tech-related supplies and fees. There's some small questions in there that I had. For example, when we're looking at books and periodicals, do we assess every year whether the textbooks we have currently are actually being used? Do we ever look into making them purchasing digital, and maybe that's more cost effective? Do we often replace our books? How often do we replace them? Just questions like that, if any of those had any help with what we're doing now in terms of the books and periodicals.
Yeah, so it's a fair point. Supplies, while it's not a huge number, it is something that is that we do look at. I know Jeff Bittler's team, for example, he's our director of technology. One of the things that he's been doing is vetting the technologies that we have throughout the district, whether it's a support technology or educational technology, and eliminating any kind of duplicate or unused or expiring licenses, because we want to be as efficient as we can. I mean, our mission is to create learning and deliver the best possible educational experiences for our kids, but we want to do that efficiently. So we definitely look at that. It's funny, you mentioned books. One of the things that we're looking at doing is finding ways that we can track that better. Because we do want to make sure that the resources that we're purchasing are being used, and if they're not, let's liquidate them while they still have some value. So we're actually been having some conversations about, well, we have these libraries in our buildings. Maybe we should be looking at kind of cataloging our resources and tracking how often they're getting checked out. And you don't make a lot of money on reselling books, but you can make some, and it's certainly worth anything that we can get. The other question, and I kind of forgot what I was going to say. You asked about.
I had asked about digital.
The savings between digital and printed books. That is alarmingly nothing. So the publishers, like, you would think when you're buying a digital copy of a book that it would cost significantly less than the hardbound paper copy. When I first got into central office, it took me about 10 minutes to realize that ain't true. So the digital copies you get charged very, very similar amounts for that, for the licensing for a certain number of years. So there really is not much savings, if any, to be gained there, which was eye-opening for me. And I'm making eye contact with Mr. Voorhis, who's nodding as well. But they're good questions.
And you already answered some other questions I had. Am I on? Yeah. For 650 tech-related supplies, I was going to ask if we assess regularly the annually renewed programs, if they're still being utilized, programs that receive updates. Do we check to make sure staff are currently using those programs? But you said that he does that pretty much throughout the year.
That is something we've been working on since Jeff has come on board.
And also I just wanted to point out, also in that supply account is our natural gas, electricity, and fuel oil and gasoline, which is included in that. So even though the state calls it supplies, the 600 code, those items are in there. So that's probably almost $1 million just in utilities that hit that account.
Is the 440 the rentals, the leasing pieces of equipment? My notes are right. I have 715,000 for the 440 rentals.
Yes.
For what pieces? I was just curious what pieces of equipment those are, because it doesn't specify. Oh, okay. No problem.
I can give you a breakdown of that.
That's okay. I was just curious if those are things.
I would
that-
think a big part of that would be we do lease and rent equipment for our facilities department, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of them.
And again, that is a cost savings approach. Our facilities department, this is the 4th district I've been with, our facilities department is more capable than any facilities department I've ever worked with. These guys are fantastic, and if we can do it in-house, it's cheaper than paying somebody on a contract.
If we can go back briefly to the library also houses a fair number of historical documents, old graduation books, the publication that comes out every year. And these are of historical interest and probably not something, you can't get old yearbooks for Pottsgrove High School from standard sources. And it goes back, the library contains documents from something called West Pottsgrove High School. where West Pottsgrove had its own school district. And so these things don't necessarily wind up in historical societies, but the districts tend to be the warehouse for this kind of information. So, and I don't know if Dr. Voorhees would have the foggiest clue where to get old copies of even the original copies, the early issues of Pottsgrove's yearbooks, let alone the predecessors from before the Pottsgrove School District formed.
I
have a question.
Oh, sorry, 633,000 of that is for IT rentals, and all of our copier rentals are in there, and our transportation, you know, if CMD or they're not, we're not using our own vans, if we need to use some of their vans, that rental cost is in there.
So,
should be back up, by the way.
okay. So my question is, I mean, this, I'm sure would not add up to much, and I don't even know if it's something that could be fixed or addressed. But I noticed a couple months in a row looking through some of the invoices and receipts paid, that we're paying for turnpike travel for, I would assume, it's administrators. I know a couple had to be school buses because it was, you know, like $70, $80 for a toll. And I know Pennsylvania Turnpike is the most expensive in the country, but it doesn't even cost that to get over to the other side, to Pittsburgh or to Ohio, sorry. But is there any way that we can do, you know, the Easy Pass, and I know that they're, you know, supposedly per vehicle, right? But I don't know if they have like some kind of program for businesses, for schools, where there can be, you know, or if if it's an administrator or a teacher or whatever, staff member driving, can they just submit their receipt from their own Easy Pass rather than us being charged 60, it's literally 60% more if you don't have an Easy Pass.
I rarely see Easy Pass from employees traveling to a conference. Hardly ever, because I approve every single expense for a conference that they send. And not too often does anybody submit expenses for turnpike tolls. And they do, the majority of them do have Easy Pass, and that's what we reimburse employees for. That's very little. The majority of it is our buses when they do go in the turnpike. And Casey did just go get 5 corporate Easy Passes.
It's 6. We have 3 for vans and 3 for buses. And they will hopefully be here by the end of this week.
Okay, so then they'll just get, you just have 3 and 3, and they can be used for whatever van or bus?
Yeah, vans
Okay,
we use for
perfect.
vans, buses we use for buses.
All right.
We have a list on our account of all 50 buses and 10 vans, whoever it is.
Awesome, thank you.
I had another question, and I should have asked this last time, I apologize. For the purchase professional and tech services, the increase that we anticipate is $750,000 for that from last year to this, I'm sorry, last year to next year. And that's largely, I believe, substitute teaching, things of that nature. And I see that the projection is $5.25 million, and then we're anticipating $5.5 million. Kind of looking for the rationale behind why we might expect an increase in those services for next year.
So, Deb, maybe you could speak to this. When we're budgeting, wouldn't some of the increase be because we're now budgeting for a full year? So one of the things that we saw through this year was we saw increases in those two categories, purchase professional and technical services and other purchase services. Some of that is, and correct me when I stray into the incorrect, some of that is new costs for special ed students that were added during the year to meet those students' needs, and we paid partial year for that because you don't start paying for that service until you actually need it. But now we have to budget for a full year of it. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be some of the increase, perhaps not all.
Nope, that's, special ed falls in that 300 category. Yep, I'm going through all the 300s.
Okay, yeah, when I look at both the purchase professional and tech services and other purchase services, that alone is about 2.1 million, just those two line items. Okay.
Yeah, other purchase services, that's your charter, cyber.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that we haven't had that conversation. So, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the number from memory is 3.9 million. So we are budgeting for next year. We are budgeting 3.9 million in charter school costs. For a district that size, of our size, I mean that is 9%. Deb, ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is having brought 30-some students back to the district from cyber charters. So this is something that continues to be a very significant impact on not only our district but budgets across this state, and it's significant.
Has there been anything new as far as, obviously the governor has made some recommendations as far as what he would like to do with capping the tuition? Has there been anything, any recent developments with regard to that?
I haven't heard any.
So I was on a call sometime in the last month where they talked about, so in the governor's proposal, there were a couple of things that would make this budget process quite a bit easier for us. The first of which was the basic educational funding was, and special ed funding combined would have been $2.2 million higher than what we're budgeting. No, 1.8 higher than what we're budgeting, correct? So that was in there, but there was also part of that proposal was a capping of the tuition for cyber charters at $8,000 per student. And just for context, we educate, our virtual program costs about $2,500 per student. So that's what it costs our district to provide that same education. Currently, as it's structured, cyber charters are charging us
It was 16 in the 24-25.
Yeah.
It's 16,000.
$16,000 per gen ed student and 34.
You're almost 35, 36-ish in that range.
So 35,000 for a special ed student. So what the governor's proposal, the clarification that has been shared with me, is that not only was there talk about capping it at 8,000 per gen ed student, there was also talk about capping the special ed tuition to meet the services provided. So the way the tuition is arrived at is it's essentially an average of the cost to provide special education in a district. Well, providing services to some students is very expensive. Depending on the disability of the child, the cost of those services provided can vary widely. Where some students it could be $100,000. In some students, it's $5,000. So it really, it's about meeting the child's needs. So there's a conversation about, instead of just giving the average to the cyber charters and charters, it's really looking at the individual child's needs and providing tuition to meet that child's need. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, as I said, the last time I talked about the governor's proposal, there's a long way between a proposal and an actual action coming out of Harrisburg. So, and frankly, we're going to have to pass our budget before we'll even see that. So. Yeah.
And if you think, we could have a child placed in a charter school having the same education as another child from another school district, and they could be paying a lot less than we're paying just because our internal costs are higher. Like, and then that's the same thing with special ed. If we have a few special ed students that were spending 100 or more thousand, and it increases our cost, and another school district's done for the same service, we're paying different prices to the same school.
Does not make a whole lot of sense. So, circling back to where we are tonight, we do anticipate that there might be a small number of additional retirements that will reduce our overall budget expenditures. But unless we're looking at talking about specific programs, the budget that we're going to bring to you is going to look pretty similar to this. So if that's the direction of the board, that's what we'll be bringing forth in April.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Thanks.
No problem. So I wanted to ask about the science curriculum that's being shelved right now. Is that something we're looking to bring forward in coming years? The following year.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're going to have to plan ahead for in the next budget.
Yes, because our current curriculum goes through the end of 24, 25. We were going to institute it earlier, but
You're gonna
we
wait.
decided to just go with the status quo and then incorporate it in the 25, 26 year when we will have to change it.
We're still going to go through with the work of evaluating the resources and see if we need to make a change and what that change would be. So we'll still do all that work, but we're going to put off the actual commitment to a new curriculum materials company for a year.
And the other thing was the intervention, I guess, services or staff that we have that are done because of the grant. Are we looking to replace that? Is it something that we need to replace, or is it something that we feel as a district we can do without or have a substitute for? So that's one thing that kind of was mentioned really fast, and it kind of just struck me, so I wrote it down real quick.
Sure.
So any more clarification on that, and if there is any plan regarding that?
Yeah, everything that we have in place
That's what I asked.
is something we believe in. I know I speak for the whole team that when we're investing taxpayer dollars to provide a educational service for the community, we do it looking through that lens, like what provides the best possible outcomes for our students and in the most efficient way. One of the things, some districts have invested a lot of the ESSER money into grant-funded positions and are now having to make very difficult decisions about, all right, do we raise taxes to do that? Mm-hmm. By and large, we use the ESSER money just to balance our budget without adding a whole lot of additional costs. There was a part of the ESSER funds that was specifically earmarked to identifying and closing the COVID learning loss. So that is part of that. So do we feel they're excellent resources and wonderful teammates? Yes, we do. In fact, while we've had those positions, that was kind of the entry point for some of our staff. They came on board in those positions and then are now in different positions with the district. So yes, it's a high value position. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, but just to be honest, when we've talked about that and we've talked about the ESSER dollars, and that happened before I came on board, it's been my understanding that this was the case with with how we allocated the ESSER dollars.
Understood.
So I do believe that, you know, we could, with the, it's not in, if the board wishes to keep those positions, majority of it, or maybe even all of it, with any future retirements that we get, could cover that cost. So it wouldn't be increasing this budget so much.
I
It's
would-
hopeful
yeah.
that that'll happen.
I would be curious as to the cost of retaining that. I'm just curious, just for,
It's about 165,000.
okay, thank you,
So all three.
for all three.
be salary benefits.
Salary and all.
It would just get added to that line, okay. That's all.
That's assuming they would take family coverage on their benefits. That would be the highest it would go. If they would come in and waive benefits, then it's a lot less. You're looking at 20,000 per person. Benefits are a lot.
And as far as the surplus that we realized from fiscal year end 2023, that's actually part of this, right? We still have a shortfall. Am I right that we still have a shortfall of about $1 million, considering that surplus, or are those dollars separate?
And this is in the 22, 23?
Yeah, I saw that we, as part of the audit report, we had a surplus.
Yes, we had like that 2.7.
Yeah, it was 2 point something.
Yeah, like almost 2.67, yeah.
That's in our fund balance now.
That's in fund balance.
Okay.
And remember I said fund balance should increase as revenues increase? I do think that we could transfer, besides the excess in 23, 24, like any excess being transferred to capital fund, I think we could from 22, 23 transfer additional like 1.8 million also over there to capital.
Yeah.
And on another note with food service, since we are doing so well on our food service and that surplus there that we had, I was kind of like holding back on spending any of that because I wasn't sure where CEP was going. We're up a little over 30%, so we're doing really, really well with CEP. And they won't drop us below our reimbursement rate. We're tied in for 4 years, but I just did a calculation of free and reduced, you know, the direct certs. And we're probably even the percent's gonna go up maybe closer to 80% reimbursement now too for next year. So I'm gonna probably use, Casey and I are looking at probably spending about $200,000 on our kitchens to get that food service balance down, because the state, you have to keep it within a certain level. So we're gonna start replacing our aging food service with the food service money, so we won't have to use capital for that.
And I just want to clarify some things for, not only for the people in the room, but also the people at home. So the CEP is the program that we put in place this year to provide free lunches for all students in the district. That is something that when we presented it, we talked about the federal reimbursement that we get for providing that, and that is what Ms. Clayhold was talking about. We've increased the meals served by 30-some% this year, which is not only great for the nutrition of our students, it's also great for the federal reimbursement. Those reimbursement dollars go to a separate fund that must be invested for food services. So one of the things that that's going to allow us to do is to replace failing equipment in our kitchens across the district, improve our offerings of food service. I know we'll be experimenting with some carts in the high school. So these are the things that's allowing us to fund. So one of the big concerns, or one of the worries that we had, certainly I had, was by providing this service to the community, free lunches for everybody, we stood to lose food service revenue, and that could potentially have been a budgetary hole. As it turns out, our forecasts were kind of right on the money, and we're not only did we not have a hole, we're actually seeing benefit to the district and also benefit to the community because they no longer have to pay for student lunches, which, not that I'm equating this, but if we're looking at a 2.2% increase, that's about $10 a month, $12 a month. Surely you can easily spend that in lunches for a month. So we are very serious about looking at the bottom line always and providing value to our community. So I just thought it would be good to bring that up. The other thing, when we talk about budgets, I get this all the time. We use a lot of language that is unique to school budgeting. Fund balance is a separate account. It is essentially a savings account. The general ledger is essentially our checking account. That's what almost all the numbers that you saw up here today are the general ledger. That's our normal operating account. That's where we pay our bills, and that's where we receive taxes. So that hopefully that's helpful.
And just to kind of repeat the question, so you felt that you could move maybe 1.8 of last fiscal year's surplus, because I hear you and I get it as far as don't use savings, but I'm not against a portion of that because it's all of our dollars, and I'm thinking about our elderly residents, the majority of residents that don't have students in our schools, that are all contributing toward this venture, and I'm not opposed to using a portion of that because after all it is all of our dollars and those of our neighbors. And I'm not of the mentality to fund everything that way and not have any sort of increase. And I want to protect us from large increases later down the road, but I appreciate the flexibility of using a portion and then being a good steward of the other dollars and putting those into savings. So I want to thank you for that. Thanks. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay. And I think that brings us to report of the superintendent.
Okay, I do have a couple of three things this evening. Last week was a fantastic week in the Grove. Last Wednesday night, Pottsgrove High School played host to the Harlem Wizards. In total, we had 915 tickets sold, and more than 60 staff and community members volunteered their time as players and event staff. The event raised more than $11,000 for the Pottsgrove Educational Foundation. The Pottsgrove Educational Foundation funds arts and engineering projects in the district. So students and future projects, a big thank you for that. A huge thank you to all the people who made the event the success that it was, especially our communication specialist and Pottsgrove Ed Foundation president, Miss Danielle Cebulski, who's in the back. So thank you. Also last week, we had James and the Giant Peach. Our middle school players performed their rendition of James and Giant Peach to enthusiastic crowds. Congratulations to our director, Mr. Tom Yenchik, and the musical director, Allison Trout, for the wonderful production. I attended Thursday, and I just want to say that your investment in the audio was very noticeable. All of the headset packs worked fantastic. There's still work to be done. The it was a little difficult to hear the chorus on stage, but that's a different mic system. But it was an excellent show, and Thursday night the crowds were very enthusiastic in their support of James and all the rest of the cast. Lastly, as our students earlier acknowledged, we had our March Madness College and Career Fair. This was the first year that we've ever done this, and it was the brainchild of Ms. Kira Ebert, who's with our high school counseling staff. And I remember talking to Ms. Ebert the day that it started and how nervous she was to try to pull it off, because nobody really does anything like this. This is very different. And personally, I think it was phenomenal. We had over 1,200 student visitations to all the variety of people. I think there were 71 different institutions that came here. Businesses, armed services, colleges, tech schools, you name it. They were here. And at least what I observed, and frankly what I heard from some of our students' testimony here, there were real genuine exchanges. It wasn't just like a college fair where you walk by, pick up a flyer, and walk out. There were real conversations. So I'm super proud of the work that the high school, Dr. Smith and his team did, and Kira and the guidance team. Fantastic. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Finnerty. We're moving on to action items personnel.
I'd like to make a motion under action items personnel that we approve 6.1 through 6.10.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 6.1 through 6.10. Do we have any questions or comments?
Just comments. We have retirees in there that I've kind of known forever, so I'll be happy to celebrate at the end of the year with them. Wish them the very best.
I would also like just to comment, when my kids got to middle school, all four of them, Mr. Algios was one name that popped up quite a lot during conversations at dinner and other times, but in a very positive way. Just they really loved him as a teacher. He made learning a lot of fun, they said, and they look forward to his class every day. So I just want to thank him for that, for years of service and years of making my kids happy. I appreciate that very much.
I'd like to piggyback off of that. My son and I were just talking about him tonight when, knowing that he was on the agenda, and, I said something like he was such a great teacher, and my son said, yeah, he really was. He was excellent, and he really enjoyed his class, and just a great teacher, and he's going to be missed.
I'd like to say something about Mrs. Flanagan. Both my boys have, she's worked with both of them, and she's just an amazing person, an amazing counselor, and I'm sad to see her go, but I wish her all the luck.
Okay. Well, with that, I always think of that with retirements. Of course, sometimes we just want to say no, but I know we have to let them go. But again, congratulations, everyone, and thank you for all the years you've dedicated to the students and to our community. Thank you. So with that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, items pass. Action items business.
Action items business. I'd like to make a motion that we approve 7.1 with an explanation for the community.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Finnerty.
So item 7.1 is a Chromebook lease for high school students. As I think everyone is aware, over the last year and a half, we've been talking about transitioning away from the iMacs, or MacBook Airs rather, and this is our first move towards that with the high school.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 7.2.
I'd like to make a motion we approve 7.2 with an explanation.
Thank you.
So item 7.2 is to approve a PIMS reporting support. So PIMS is Pennsylvania Information Management System. It is the database to which we must report all manner of data. We've had an opening in that position recently. This is just a contract to approve any short-term support that we need to stay compliant with the PIMS reporting.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. 7.3.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve 7.3 with another explanation, please.
Do we have a second? Second. Thank you.
Okay, so item 7.3 is the PA Helps Grant Agreement. The district applied for and was awarded a state-funded grant through PA Helps Grant Program, which encourages students in the fields of school nursing, school social work, school counseling, and school psychology to complete internships in school-based mental health fields in Pennsylvania and obtain their employment and certification in a Pennsylvania LEA. This is one of the steps that the district has been taking. Mr. Voorhees and Dr. Lucas and Ms. Thompson have been working with this and a number of other agreements that we've kind of brought up here to kind of grow and nurture relationships with post-secondary institutions so that we have a good supply of people who can move in and work for our district. So this is one of those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. 7.4.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve 7.4.
No explanation.
No explanation this time.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve 7.4. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to action items, education.
I'd like to make a motion under education, we approve 8.1 and 8.2.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 8.1 and 8.2. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motions pass. 8.3.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve 8.3 and 8.4 with an explanation, please.
Thank you.
So 8.3 is an agreement, an affiliation agreement with DeSales University, and 8.4 is an affiliation agreement with Gwynedd Mercy University. And both of these are in that same category where we're looking to grow our relationship with post-secondary institutions so that we can work with these organizations and support their students and also selfishly identify potential Falcons and hire them away. So is that a fair? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motions pass. Moving on to 9.1.
I don't know if it was sent to me because I'm the secretary or because I am the current MCIU representative for the board, probably because I'm secretary. But I have been serving on the MCIU board for 3 years, and my term is up July 1st. I am more than happy to hand the reins over to somebody else, and Anik very kindly offered to take my position. So I think we should have a nomination. So can I just go ahead and nominate her? Sure. Okay, I would like to nominate Anik Ruiz-Brown for the position of MCIU board representative for Pottsgrove. Her term would go from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2027. All right.
would be appropriate for this particular nomination, because this will be approved by the MCIU board.
To have a second?
Yes,
Okay. And did,
Jim did.
Jim, that's what I thought. All right, so,
You vote to approve that. And you're opposed to that.
Thank you, Mr. Subers. So we have a motion and multiple seconds for Ms. Ruiz Brown. So, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, and thank you for serving. Okay, we're moving on to 10.1. You get to give the
I
report.
get to go again. So I did receive the highlights from the meeting that was on February 28th, 2024. So that night, our program highlight was from Alfred Howard. He is the director of the Office of Facilities and Operations. He just basically went over everything that his office does, which is a massive amount of work. They oversee all of the operations and facilities for every single building, and then they basically lend out their services to other school districts, as we have seen when Jeff Cardwell came and helped us out over the summer. And I mean, knowing how much our facilities and maintenance crews do here, you can just imagine that on, a scale of times, I don't know, 20 for their crew. And they do an amazing job, and they then have time to help out the rest of the school districts. Next thing that came up was the announcement for the nomination process with all of the different schools that were, whose seats were up. We had our audit, which was oh so exciting. And then we approved the renewal of the employment agreement with Dr. Landis to continue to be assistant executive director. And that is effective July 1st. And then after that, it was just the different departments going through and just highlighting the things that they felt that we should know about. And, I mean, none of them are terribly exciting. So, for instance, the MCIU board approved a 4-year lease agreement with the Toshiba Business Solutions for copy machines. So that's the level of excitement of some of this stuff. So anyway, our next meeting is actually tomorrow night. It is fully virtual because of the different spring breaks that are going on within the schools. So I will have my report next month on that.
Okay, any questions with regard to the report? We're going to move on to 11.1, approving the policy committee meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve 11.1 with the minutes.
Thanks. We have a motion and a second to approve 11.1. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 11.2, report of the Operations Finance Committee meeting.
Sorry, the Finance Committee met. Pardon? One day I'll learn how to turn this on. The Finance Committee met on March 12th, and we had two major items of old business. The first was the discussion of the 10-year plan by the athletic facility. This was presented by Steve Ansbach and Casey Blankenbiller. They discussed the faculty 10-year plan. They had 3 companies come in and evaluate the facilities and discuss current and future improvements. They spent time talking about what would be done over the summer. There are several projects they mentioned. The 7th grade baseball field at the middle school, which will involve cutting out the field. And since the field is mostly grass, the grass, a softball batting cage, and is in need of repair and is in aging. I'm not too fond of people who use aging as a preposition to describe obsolete. Also, putting in a digital scoreboard, and there was considerable discussion about whether this would be self-powered or battery-powered or run off a plug. They do have a donation from Pottsgrove Future Falcons to help pay for this. However, the district will be responsible for the installation. Other projects for this summer include general football stadium beautification and bleacher screening. The summer project shall not exceed a cost of $30,000. The immediate concern moving forward to the summer of 2025 is the high school tennis court renovations. There are cracks in the court that are over 1/2 inch wide. In my younger days, I was a runner, and I ran on this kind of track. And the cracks they're describing present a trip hazard if you're just running by yourself. If you're running in a contest and you have to work around people, it's probably considerably more difficult. For summer 2026, the high school track will need to be replacing as the track is separating from the asphalt and the trench drain around the surface is starting to fail. They provided lots of photographs of that. And the new fence, excuse me. They are also discussed adding artificial turf to the stadium at the same time as the track renovation, as the construction would already be occurring at the same time, which would be a cost saving to the district. I believe most of our neighboring high schools have artificial turf, which comes as a surprise to me because we always had natural grass. Along with the turf, the district could rent out the facility after it's renovated for added income. Also, using turf would allow our band to practice on the field. And I was kind of surprised to learn that our band, which is quite good, given its small size as compared to the Marching 97 discussed earlier, but our band doesn't practice on the football field because of the grass. And so that would be a considerable improvement. So that was just a few of the items. The 10-year plan had, as I recall, a $10 million cost associated with it. So these renovations are not cheap. The second item was from Western Institute, Mr. David Livingood from WMCTC came to the committee to present the maintenance plan to the Pottsgrove School Board members. There are no budgetary concerns at the Western Center. Their budget is very different than ours. There are no budgetary reserves for large maintenance expenses or capital projects. The projects that have been completed over the past few years have been helped by ESSA funds, and those funds are finished, as has been discussed several times, after this year. There are projects coming up in future years that are going to require larger funding, and we need to get all 3 school districts, Pottsgrove, Upper Perk, and Springford, to meet to discuss the funding of capital projects and how the contributions from each school are going to be divided. Some of the projects coming up for Western in 2024 are milling and paving of the parking lots, approximately $1 million. In 2025, upgrade of the Cat 6A data cable, interior painting, and recommissioning building mechanical systems, approximately close to $1 million in 2026. The rooftop units will need to be replaced, over $1.1 million. Mr. Levensgood's presentation showed projects up to 2035, or roughly 10 years. This will require a convention of the 3 school boards to collaborate and vote to ratify the agreement that is in place now and to figure out how the districts are going to contribute to this funding. Let me just add that the 3 districts by themselves could not mount the kind of VOTEC programs that Western has. It's got a really outstanding program, and I really encourage you, if you haven't been out there, to take a look. So the meeting adjourned at 6:57. So that's my report. I have copies of the PowerPoint presentations for both the athletic department and for Western. So if you want, and I believe they're on, they may be on the website. So that's my report. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Any questions from anybody? Yes, thank you. One thing that I remember we talked about and just kind of put it on everybody's radar was with regard to the improvement plan, facilities improvement plan, is that we want to kind of have a direction, because there's sort of an order to these projects, so that we're not like, how many times have we driven through town and you see they'll pave a road and then they'll come through later and cut it up to put new pipe in that was due. And then they'll repave it again, or actually they won't, they'll just fill that in. So we don't want to do that. So we just have to be mindful of the projects and the order in which
I think they
considered.
are roughly where we were, a couple of years ago. They've got a to-do list in general, and they have a vague idea of how much it's going to cost, not corrected for inflation. One thing I recall mentioning, them mentioning, is that there's a water spot or a soft spot in the ground, and that's potentially problematic because it's near a sewer line. So there are problems. They are aware of them. They are starting to think about them, and they realize this situation of a need for capital improvements is not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to require a lot of work, such as we put forward in our planning for renovations at West. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll turn it on in a few minutes.
All right, we're moving on to 11.3, the CIT committee report.
Good evening. The Curriculum Instruction and Technology Committee met on Tuesday, March 19th, and on that evening, we had 5 items for discussion. The first was sort of a carryover from the February meeting, where we've been discussing the implementation of our Reveal Math resources that we use for mathematics instruction. At this meeting, there were 4 elementary teachers. They were providing the elementary perspective on what a typical lesson looks like, how our learners engage in that instruction, and sort of the processes that our students are following through that instruction. We also provided an update on our Professional Learning Day that's coming up this Thursday. You may or may not know that these days come along with a lot of planning, because there's quite a few people in the district we need to plan meaningful activities for the professional learning. That all starts. We really go through that process annually. We invest quite a bit of time over the summer thinking about our district goals and thinking about the learning that needs to occur in order for those district goals to move forward. So we sort of begin allocating time across the year for that learning to occur. And then when each of those days comes up, we get a little more specific on the learning that might be provided on that day. So moving into this Thursday, our secondary crew is, I think somebody mentioned earlier today, they're doing some of the trauma-informed work that our elementary, at least portions of the elementary crew have done previously. They're also spending some time grade 6 through 12 collaboration. So you think about a 6th grade math teacher and an Algebra 2 teacher at the high school, they don't often have time to collaborate and connect with one another. And yet that time is very valuable to think about the programming, the pacing, and the content that they're teaching. So they're spending some of their time working on that, looking at some curriculum work in terms of common assessments, data analysis, and really talking about the final 8 weeks of school, believe it or not. The elementary crew is talking about text-dependent analysis. So I think you heard that at a previous CIT meeting, something that we're working on, a very critical life skill for our students. We're discussing some new science standards that will be coming into play for us and will actually be a topic of CIT at a future meeting. And they're also working on some curriculum work on that day as well. A third item that we discussed is a favorite among the CIT committee, and that is the topic of personal finance. Only this time we weren't talking about it here locally. We were talking about sort of a mandate that's forthcoming for us from Pennsylvania Department of Education. So there's been some bipartisan legislation recently passed that will require for all LEAs in the Commonwealth to provide a half-credit course at the high school level on topics surrounding personal finance, financial literacy. The exact title of it remains to be seen. Simultaneously, our State Board of Education also passed K-12 financial literacy standards, sort of defining the work and what that course might need to include and look like. That will all become, both the course as well as those standards become operational for schools in 2026, 2027. What that means is we have some time to plan for it, but we'll need all of that time to plan for it. The state has told us that they will be providing guidance for us, although we don't yet have a timeline of when that guidance will be available. However, we suspect and expect it to include things in terms of some of the reporting that we're going to be responsible for. They've already indicated certifications an individual might need to have. But still up in the air is exactly what it's going to look like and which content area it might get credit for. So additional information will be coming from that. We'll be likely providing ongoing updates about what we learn at future CIT meetings, and we'll keep coming to the group with that. The fourth item was Improving School Performance Conference. I had the opportunity to attend as our coordinator for federal programs in our district. So that includes our Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV dollars. Federal program coordinators in each district have an opportunity. There's actually a membership across the Commonwealth, and they put on a series of conferences throughout the year. This one was their annual conference, or one of their annual conferences, really thinking about improving school performance. So one of the things that I had shared with the CIT committee is one thing that, just one of the things I took a lot of, really resonated with me was really how we do evaluating professional learning opportunities. So in many districts or many professional learning, we do a really good job of saying, hey, what'd you think of that? Was the room a good temperature? Did you like lunch? But we don't always have a great idea of what impact it has had in terms of teaching and more importantly on learning. So we're going to begin using that information as part of that annual process that we go through for thinking about our professional learning, really thinking about what student outcomes do we expect as a result of this, what are teacher behaviors that may need to change, and what are some organizational and system pieces that need to be in place to allow for those changes to occur. So that will all become part of the planning process that we go through each and every year. And then finally, Mr. Bittler provided for us some information about a phishing campaign. This is PHISH, not phishing. So phishing, for those of you who want some additional information, is when something's sent out through email that could potentially be fraudulent and could be collecting information from any individual that would compromise the overall system. So this campaign that we're going to be going through starts with sort of an education process. It's really an introductory email that will be given or sent out to staff so that they're aware of what this is for and why. And then really a sample phishing email goes out and data is collected through which we get to analyze how people respond to that. Hopefully everybody says, Mr. Bittler, something really fishy came across, no pun intended, something very fishy came across my email, and hopefully nobody says, here's my social security number, and here's my credit card number, and by the way, here's the district's credit card number, because all of that would be bad. So all of this is very helpful information to really evaluate the things that we need to do moving forward to make sure that everybody's very much aware of the ongoing risks that are associated with that. Mr. Lappick or any of the other 6 members, is there anything I missed that we discussed on that evening?
Not that you missed, just I wanted to say that really appreciated having the teachers there, and I know you're thanking them as well. It wasn't just that they were there, but it was really nice to have them walk us through the actual exercise, because I know like in our group, the teachers were telling us this is how the students usually react to this, and this is one of the things we talked to the students about. It really gave a sort of a full circle look to what we've been doing, so I really appreciated that.
I did share with Mr. Lappick, thank you cards have already been written to those individuals and sent, and I did include a line because Mr. Lappick did share, please extend the appreciation of the board. So that was a line in my handwritten thank you notes to each of them. We very much appreciate what they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 11.4, Athletics Co-Curricular Community Relations Committee Report.
I was unable to attend, so Steve and Danielle will fill us in.
Hello, everyone. At our last committee meeting, I updated the board on how the district has begun to partner with our existing parent groups in our building. This is in our buildings. This is a follow-up to our discussions that we had at our virtual January committee meeting, where we invited leaders from our existing parent groups to talk to our committee about ways that we can better partner with the district, but also just within the groups themselves. And one of the things that we came up with was a community organization social media calendar. So I was able to, between January and March, connect with those existing groups, and we published our first online social media calendar, which was great. The objective of the calendar is to facilitate improved coordination and promotion of the events between the parent groups, and also ensure that our community is well informed about all the activities that are going on, and also how they might want to participate or volunteer if they so choose. So this initiative will continue throughout the rest of the school year and hopefully through next. I also wanted to add that a collaboration between the Ed Foundation and the Booster Club will be happening next fall. We are going to host a powder puff game. So that's something that's come out of this as well. Yeah. Next, I talked to the board about an upcoming district-wide donation drive. This was brought to my attention by our 2 social workers. They would like to host a spring donation drive that includes asking our community for non-perishable food items, toiletry items, and cleaning supplies. This will last from April 8th to May 3rd. It's going to be a collaboration between the district, but also the high school student council, which is going to be great. They helped us a lot with advertising with Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, and I do believe that they contributed a lot to that success. So I'm very happy to be partnering with them again. This spring donations drive will benefit an end-of-year open house. So We aim to gather enough donations through this drive to facilitate the end of the year open house for our Pottsgrove families who may need support in stocking up on items over the summer months. We'll advertise this to all Pottsgrove families. Will be invited to attend. It'll be at the end of May, I believe May 22nd, in the Rocks cafeteria, and they'll be able to select items that they deem to be most beneficial to them and their family over those summer months. So it will be for all the community, and the items will be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis. Dr. Finnerty already spoke about the Harlem Wizards event, so I won't go on too long about that. I just wanted to thank everyone who came out. I think our community had a great, fun time. Thank you to everyone who helped me put this together. It was definitely a team effort, so I'm looking forward to talking to our Ed Foundation directors and seeing how we want to spend those funds next school year. And lastly, I gave an update on our district social media accounts. Some of the highlights over the past month include our Addams Family Musical, which, as you all know, was a huge success. Read Across America Week at our elementary schools, specifically the post with our student athletes as they visited Lower West and Rocks. Those pictures got a lot of press. Our athletic college signing that took place in February. Mrs. Sheehan, she is a teacher up at Rocks. Her class did dirt cup creation, sensory style, and also the Lower Pottsgrove Taylor Swift party. So this was a PBIS incentive. So if students had a certain amount of tickets, they're called golden tickets, they could cash them in to this Taylor Swift party. And it was really fun, if I say so myself.
That's great. Thank you. So on the athletics end, April 20th, our 2024 Athletic Hall of Fame class will be inducted. So I provided information to the committee. 5 inductees, 12 o'clock, community's welcome. There'll be invitations sent out to all board members. But Mrs. Jenna Manula, Mrs. Michelle Metz, Mr. Zachary Robinson, Mr. Ryan Stairs, and Mr. Philip Washington will all be here on April 20th to be inducted into our Athletic Hall of Fame. Already had some great discussion with a few of these members and a mom of one of our inductees that was very taken back that they were being inducted and that they're going to be coming back to Pottsgrove. So it's a very rewarding event for our school district. So again, April 20th at 12 o'clock in our high school library. Also discussed with the committee us moving. We currently have an athletic scheduling platform that we use with the Pioneer Athletic Conference called Big Team Schedule Star. We are looking to upgrade our package to the Pro Plan, which is basically upgraded an athletic website, but it's going to make all our athletic forms and registration completely digital, completely online, which is getting up to the times. A lot of school districts in our area do it. Families will have to create an account. All physical forms will be uploaded on there. All Section 8 recertification forms will be on there. And their accounts will travel with them through the duration of their high school athletic experience, which I think is going to streamline our information. It is an increase of $595. And it's $595 because some of the programs that are offered through the upgraded plan, some of the other programs that we use, we're no longer going to have to use and pay for them. So it'll be a total of $595. But I'm excited at that because the way we do things is kind of piecemeal right now, so it'll streamline all our information. And I know a lot of our parents we do this at the youth level, so I think they're looking forward to keeping everything streamlined. And what it also does, even on our athletic end, all medical information through our trainer now, he doesn't have to do the same thing twice. He can do the same thing once, and all that information now will stick with them over their career. And the last thing I brought up, we have Pottsgrove, our SOAR program. So Pottsgrove supports opportunities, achievements, and relationships with staff and students. I provided an update. We currently have 20 programs running, after-school programs. Anyway, from TSA that was here today, that's how we fund that program currently. From the German Club, Diversity Club, Movie Club, Star Wars Club. So it's a wide variety of after-school clubs that's pretty much open to, as long as we can get 12 or more kids involved and doing something after school with staff, we're all open to hear what they want to do and how they want to do it, and we can support them. So currently, we have 348 students that have participated in these clubs. We also have the STEM programs that are run at our elementary levels. And if we added them, it would be 2,748 students, because it's all the students that run those programs or that participate in those programs at the elementary levels through Mrs. Randall and Mrs. Egan. And they do a phenomenal job, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, so that's how we're able to fund those events. So that concludes committee members. Am I missing anything from that event or that meeting? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. We're moving into new business. 12.1, the resolution for fair funding of public schools. We have this open as a discussion item, and it looks as if we would be voting on it at our next meeting, April 9th. And this is something Dr. Nippert had brought to us. Dr. Nippert, do you want to lead the discussion?
Okay. I sort of feel like some of this discussion would have fitted in earlier in our budgetary considerations, because the resolution supports adequate funding for public schools. The state Supreme Court, Pennsylvania Supreme Court, has held that Pennsylvania's current funding for education is inadequate and does not provide, quote, the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education, end of quote. The current system deprives children living in low-income districts of educational opportunities that are available to those from wealthier districts. How did this disparity happen? And I want to take a historical approach to explain how we got to this point where our legislature is in violation of the interpretation of the Constitution, and it may help clarify a lot of the discussion that went on, because it's easy to get lost in the grass here. Pennsylvania currently provides, and you'll correct me if I'm off on this, about 1/3 of the revenue for school districts, roughly 1/3, right?
No, I don't think it's 1/3. You mean the state gives the school districts 1/3 of our revenue?
Yeah, roughly from various sources, if you take all the state sources.
Okay. Yeah, with PCERS and that, yeah.
Yeah, about 1/3. Okay. So it's roughly 1/3 of the revenue from school districts, where it comes from at this point, which budget line is not important, but about 1/3. When I went to school in the 1960s, and yeah, you can do the math to figure out how old I am, the state provided more than 1/2 of the revenue. That's quite a change in the state's funding level. What does this long-term change from roughly 1/2 to 1/3 or less, what does that long-term change do to districts? As the fraction of the state aid has decreased over the years, the districts compensated as prices rose, and the state failed to preserve its fraction of the funding. A district can raise revenue mostly by raising property taxes. If the district has a high assessed value of property, such as expensive housing, or more importantly, industries, like shopping malls, factories, and nuclear power plants, things that won't move away, then the district can raise revenues. A slight increase will generate enough revenue to make up for the difference in lost aid. That's the net effect of what our discussion was about. We've got to raise revenue to compensate for decreasing support from the state. If the district is a poorer district, has a lower tax base, it has to raise taxes to compensate a lot. And that's the basis for saying that poor districts like Pottstown, us, are penalized by the current funding system. It's a process that's happened literally over 50 years. The state's current funding level hurts low-income district, and that violates the state's constitution. Now, the necessary changes have not yet been made. What this resolution does is it says, please follow the ruling of the Supreme Court. What the Supreme Court said is, you're not funding districts properly. We're not going to tell you how to do it because we're not educators. We're lawyers. This resolution encourages the legislature and the governor to change the funding. Anik and I attended a webinar last night where they explained the current plan. It's not the law, it's a suggestion. We won't know what the current law is until after our budget is prepared. What we need to do is lean on the legislatures to simply follow the law. Therefore, I urge the adoption of this resolution. It's not going to change the current budget, but it will bring pressure on legislatures, and legislatures around election time tend to be very sensitive to the wishes of the public, called the voting public. So I urge the adoption of this resolution. So thank you, and now I turn it on right.
Thank you for all of the time that you've spent digging into this, researching it, and summarizing it for us. Are there any questions from anyone with regard to the resolution? Okay. Thanks. It really helps empower us to put us in a great position for voting on April 9. I appreciate it. And we're moving on to new business. Dr. Finnerty.
And nothing for me.
Jay, would you have anything for new business tonight? Is he on? I can check back with Jay. We'll move on to Patty.
It was just an exciting week with the Wizards. My granddaughter did a fantastic job. I'm so proud of her at the play. But it's just a time to reflect and celebrate, be with all my grandkids this weekend. So I wish everybody a wonderful holiday.
Thanks. Anik?
I just wanted to say that the Wizards event was so much fun. It really was. And I got some of the teachers doing the Cotton Eye Joe dance on videotape, so videotape. Oh my gosh. Not videotape.
Betamax. I'm Betamax old. Tanya?
Yeah, I would just say that the webinar last night, they didn't know I was on it, I guess, but it was very informative, a lot of information. I know that they did say they were going to send out basically the packet to people. I don't know if you had to be registered or not in order to receive it, but if people are interested, check your email, and if you need it forwarded to you, we can definitely do that too.
Thank you. Dr. Nippert?
I'm done.
Oh. Thank you. Jim? Bill? Ashley? I won't come to you this time, Mr. Subers. Coming back to Jay, just in case there was anything you might want to share?
I don't seem to be coming through.
Hey, we have him. Go ahead.
There's nothing from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Public comment, 13-1. Do we have anyone in the room wishing to offer public comment? This can be on any matter whatsoever. It does not have to adhere to agenda items. How about anyone online? Okay. With that, we've come to a time of adjournment. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Good night, everyone. Thank you.